The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you through our affiliate relationships with the following sponsors. Digital Accelerant, the digital mobile business card that generates leads. Text the word law to 21,000 to get connected and learn how to get your own digital business card. And by Fetch Internet and Fetch Pro, the secure, high-speed app that eliminates the need to pay for hotspots or use public unsecure Wi-Fi. And Printify, the online, on-demand print shop for all your corporate merchandise. Be sure to visit our online store and get your own podcast merch. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. And
I just started looking at law school again, and I think it's just because it was an easy thing that I've always thought about doing, that I'm like, if not going to law school looks like this, maybe I should be going to law school. Right. So, again, I still was, not thinking about what my soul wanted me to do. It was more like, I need some financial stability. I still was maybe a little bit on the status. Like I was just lost. I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
So, applied and got into UCLA.
Okay.
Went to UCLA, for my first year. And then my ex-husband got a job over in DC. So I transferred to American for my last 2 years, which is a great school. And since I was going there and I was in the center of like the international legal world, really, which is what I had wanted to do. I started doing my master's at American while I was finishing my law degree.
Jeez.
When I was at UCLA, I knew I wanted to do like international human rights. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer, but I'm going to do a lawyer that like changes the world and makes a difference. Right.
Yeah. Like George Clooney's girlfriend, wife now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The international lawyer.
Yeah. So I remember I was speaking to someone and I was like, I want to do like international human rights law. And she goes, Natalie, when you say that, it's kind of like saying, you're in a pageant and you're saying, I want world peace. Like, what do you mean? Like there has to be a specific thing you have to focus on. And I was like, wow. Okay. So I had gone to this speaking engagement on human trafficking. And I mean, this was 2003 and human trafficking is like, everybody knows about it now. But at the time there weren't a lot of people talking about it.
Right.
So I went to it and I was just like, what is happening? This is what I need to do.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work. And they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. Just to remind you, the podcast is produced and brought to you by my legal practice, Beinhacker Law. We provide business and estate services to entrepreneurs, inventors, and other small business owners. Whether you're just getting started or you've been operating for a long time, contact us for all your general legal needs, from contracts to client agreements, from purchasing a new location to onboarding a new partner or key employee. We draft all types of agreements and handle most business transactions. For more information about our products and services, visit beinhackerlaw.com or you can follow our link in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's interview.
Hi, I'm Natalie Palomino, Master Stylist and founder of North Authentic, conscious hair care retailer. We just try to bring beautiful hair to everybody with conscious values. So we're trying to keep all the toxins out of our hair care routine. And I'm super excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Mitchell.
All right, Natalie. So we were talking off the mic, and I'm glad that we finally got this, together, because it always takes me a long time to connect with everybody. But I want to tell your story, or have you tell your story. So maybe we can go back before we get into North Authentic and what it is and what you're doing with all the great stuff for the environment and with your company and people and everything. We can go back to where you're from, what your background is. Because I know I want to hear how you got into being a stylist and everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to. I had kind of many chapters before actually becoming a hairstylist. So,
okay, good stories. I want to hear it all.
So, yeah, I mean, where would you like me to start?
Well, wherever you started, where'd you grow up? Where are you from? Are you originally from this country? Your parents from this country? Where'd you go? Did you go to college? Did you not? Did you live on the streets and then have to make your way into, I don't know. I've heard all kinds of
my life doesn't sound as
stories.
exciting anymore. Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Orange County, California, where I live now and where my business is. Yeah, my father was born and raised in Mexico, came here when he was 9. My mom was born and raised here. They met young, had all 3 of us by the time my mother was, I think, 21.
Wow.
So yeah, young parents, there's 3 of us kids. Yeah. And just, grew up in Orange County, I don't know how much they're going to love me saying this, but my, my parents and my siblings all pretty much went as far as high school. So me going through college, I went to USC, was, a big deal in my family, which was awesome. I kind of was just always born with that drive. And yeah, went on to, feel like I wanted to do something more. I wanted to kind of leave Southern California. So left for a couple years after undergrad. And
what did you major in undergrad?
International finance. So as a kid, it was kind of funny. My family kind of made fun of me saying I was like the female version of Alex P. Keaton, like from Family Ties. Like my mom would give me her old checkbooks and Sharpie out her account number. And I would make my siblings come to my bank and deposit
That's
checks.
Funny.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I always was like, my family, like I said, they didn't work in the finance world, that we didn't have attorneys or anything like that. So we didn't have a ton of money growing up. So I think I had convinced myself I had to work at a bank or be an attorney, if I wanted to make money. I think it's so different these days. I think kids grow up like, I can make money doing
anything,
things.
Right?
Yeah. But I feel like in like the early 70s, early 80s, you were kind of like, if you want to be financially stable.
Yeah, right. That's all we thought.
Going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Definitely, right? Yeah.
So, publicists and all these other kind of interesting things, it wasn't even in my realm. So I thought, I have to work in finance, where I have to be an attorney. So
yeah,
I always assumed I was going to do some sort of corporate finance law type of a thing, even as a small child. So yeah, playing bank. And that was, I loved it. I always my dreams were me in a suit in an office somewhere, which is so funny. Yeah.
That is
my
funny.
sister wanted to be an actress and I'm like, I just want to wear a suit and have an office.
You're in California, right? So
yeah.
So where did you go from college? Where did you go away for a while? Because you said you're in California now. So
yes, I'm in California now. So, so I try to join the Peace Corps. This is going to be I'm going to try to make it way shorter.
This is a great story.
Yeah. So I joined the Peace Corps and, I tried, and their medical, to get passed for their medical review, it takes 1.5 years. Like they want to make sure you are in every healthy way, I guess, to go and leave this country, because they're going to put you in the middle of nowhere. Right. So
yeah, of course.
So at the time, because of the income when we were growing up, I wasn't able to get braces until I was in college, and I paid for them myself.
Your teeth.
For teeth. Yeah. So I had braces through USC. So I was not cute going through college. So as I finally graduate, I have my braces on. I'm getting ready to take them off. So the Peace Corps is telling me, the people that I'm applying with are like, we're worried about your braces. And I'm like, but I'm getting them off. And they're like, well, yeah, but you need to go back for checkups for like 6 months. And if you leave, in February, which was like already
there's
6
no
months
worth
away.
Yeah,
there's no way you're going to get it checked. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. Like, just place me. I was graduating in the winter of 98. And this was already, I feel like July of 98. And I'm like, I want us to get me out of here as soon as I graduate, whatnot. So
now wait, can we back up a second?
Yeah.
Because here you are, you're an international finance major. You're like Alex P. Keaton, and you're going into the Peace Corps. I don't think Alex P. Keaton was going to the Peace Corps. Like, where'd that come from?
Okay. So one interesting thing too was, my resume, at the time I was so hard on myself, because I've always been very hard on myself, but when I look at my resume now, I'm like, holy crap. Like I taught CPR for the Red Cross. I was in every business organization. I was like, I have to pump up this resume if I'm going to get into a good law school, you know? So to me, education is like so number one. And I had the wrong, you know, a lot of people, I think they're like, I have to go to top 10. I have to, you know, now I wish I knew better. Now I wish I knew more, you know, you get older, you're wiser.
Me too.
But at the time I did not know. And I was like, I have to go to the number, you know, something in the top 5.
I
so
know.
I,
I felt the same way.
Right. And it's like, now I see kids and I'm like, oh my God, you went to this super cool school in this beautiful town, you know, that I would have never known about. Because I was so busy. Like, I got to go to Harvard or I got to, you know,
driven.
So,
right.
Yeah. So I learned a lot, you know, but at that point, I thought, you know, I need my resume to be great. Plus, I just wanted to leave I wanted to get out of
see the world a little bit.
Yeah. I was kind of starting to, my bleeding heart, I'm a Cancer. I'm very maternal and sensitive. And that's why my business is the way it is too. But at the time I was starting to feel like there was more. That there was more than just making a lot of money. And even though I always had wanted that financial stability, I just was like, you know, I want to also feel good about what I'm doing. So I kind of started to have these questions, and it made me seek out the Peace Corps thinking, you know, I could do something to give back. It's not going to hurt my resume. It'll probably help me get into a better school, but also, you know, there was that whole bleeding heart kind of a thing. Right. So
here they won't let you in because of your braces.
Because I have braces on, right?
Right.
So it was good. So I was starting to identify like, wait, this isn't all about, you know, status and money and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, it's taking so long to get into the Peace Corps. I'm like, okay, I want to get out of California. I want to get out of the US. I want to go somewhere. So I started looking up other things I can do. So I found this company called Bunac. I don't know if they still exist, but you pay them like, it was $300 and they will get you a working license or like a visa,
like work visa.
Work visa. Yeah. For another country.
Okay.
And so whatever the country is, I was like, okay, I speak no other languages. You know, I still can't. That part of my brain is like cut out, I think. So I was like, I got to go somewhere that speaks English. So I applied to go to the UK. And then I decided, well, I was my girlfriend, so one of my close girlfriends and I, we were like, let's go on a fun trip. So we planned to go to Bali. And then I applied to go teach English in China for a year. So Peace Corps wasn't coming through, but all those things came through. So
so you teach what? English as a second language over in China?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think I was placed, I can't remember, it was called like Guangzhou, which is kind of a big area now for manufacturing, which is interesting. But so funnily enough, here comes February of 1999. And I've graduated in December and I'm leaving for London in 2 weeks because I still had not heard from the Peace Corps. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to hear from them.
You're not getting in.
I'm doing
You're not going to wait. You didn't want to wait.
Yeah. So somebody calls me from the Peace Corps and he's like, hey, we placed you. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? They're like, yeah, we can have you leave in the next few weeks. And I was like, oh my gosh, I already committed to this school in China. And I already, you know,
your girlfriend's going with you. You're going to dump her.
Friends, well, she was meeting me. So I was going to go to London for 6 months on my work visa because you only get a 6-month work visa there.
Right.
And then we were meeting in Bali for 2 months. And then I was going to go to China from there. Right. So I had a year and a half planned, kind of almost as long as I was going to go to the Peace Corps. So, they called and I was like, I can't do this to everybody I've committed to. And I'm like, but I'm curious, where were you going to place me? And he goes, Uzbekistan. And I know Uzbekistan now because I did regional comparative studies.
Right. You're like, where the hell is that?
Yeah, at the time I was like, what? He's like, Uzbekistan. I'm like, where's that? And he's like, you know, it's by Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, you know, like all the stands. Like that's the way he described it.
That's how he said it?
It was so funny. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm like, well, yeah, no, I can't go. You know, later studying, you know, regional comparative studies, I was like, oh my God, that would have actually been a very cool time to be in Uzbekistan because the history there is nuts. Yeah. So it actually would have been very educational. But anyways, alas, I left for London.
But you would have to wear like a burqa. I mean, you know, you're a woman in Uzbekistan. I can't imagine.
100%. Yeah. It would have been.
You know what?
Totally
whatever.
different.
It's experience, right? But it sounds better though. The whole London, Bali, China thing sounds like a much better swing.
Yeah, it didn't suck. My alternative plan did not suck.
Right.
So,
it was better.
So go to London for 6 months and traveling all over Europe on the weekends.
What'd you do in London? Just some job so you could travel and make money?
So it was funny because Bunac has this hostel there off Tottenham Court Road in near Oxford. So like the coolest part of central London. And they had a 4-story hostel where it was all Bunac kids. So every room, there was like 4 beds. And I still have really good, one of them was in my wedding. I still have really good friends all over that at Bunac. And it was really cool. People were from all over the world. Yeah. So, so everybody was working at like pubs and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to work for a law firm. So I went and looked for, so I went and contacted like a job placement company, and they put me in a bunch of law firms all over London. So I worked for about 4 different law firms. That Hale and Dorr was like the UK version. I think it was called like Kirkland Hale and Dorr at the time. They were like a big firm that did that whole, John Travolta movie, this is so long ago now, but it was like the first Aaron Brockovich story. So they were a big firm. So I worked for the UK offices for a few different firms. And then I would travel on the weekends, or just say, hey, can I take a 3-day weekend? So I was getting, again, my resume was looking great. And traveling, slept in a park in Pamplona because we couldn't find a hotel for the running of the bulls, just doing all the fun
cool
stuff. I was 23 years old.
Right. Exactly. You're not going to do it when you're 43. So.
Yeah. And so I was making a lot more money than almost everybody else there because they were working at pubs. But I was really enjoying the work, but I started to see all of the attorneys I worked for. I was kind of like they called me an office junior. So it's kind of like an administrative assistant. So I would just be running around delivering stuff and every office I would be bringing just piles of paperwork in and putting it on top of their desk that already had piles of paperwork. Yep. And this look on their face was always their head was down in their hands and just reading. And I started to really do I didn't even think it was soul searching at the time, but I started to go, this doesn't look
what
fun.
You thought it was going to be.
This doesn't look, this isn't like private practice shows, where it's like sexy. You're always in court, you're like, you read all day.
Yeah. At big firms, that's what you do.
Yep. Yeah. So, and you're very detail oriented, right? So I started to realize like, I don't know if I want to do this. And I was studying for the LSAT.
Oh, you were?
While I was doing this. Yeah. Cause I was like, I'm going to have to take the LSAT when I get back. And I remember being in a park with one of my friends that I had made. And I was just listening to music, and it was, like St. James Park, and all the parks in London are just beautiful. And I just said, I don't think I want to do this. And she's like, what, go to law school? And I go, yeah. And she goes, yeah, I don't think you should. I don't think it's you. And I go, oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't think it's right for me. I go, I'm thinking how I'm having the time of my life here.
Right. You're going to be miserable being a lawyer.
Yeah. And also I'm like, I'm not making any money. Like I was still making more than all the other kids, but I wasn't making that much money. But I was like, I'm enjoying my life without making a ton of money. So is that really what's necessary? Like I've been after it for so long because of our financial issues growing up that I'm like, money's going to be the end all save all of my life, And I start to realize like, this is not gonna, I don't know if I want to do this. So anyways, had kind of come to that conclusion, which is funny because later you're going to hear I went to law school. So decided, I'm just going to go meet my friend in Bali. And so, from there, met her in Bali. Loved Bali. It's very
what's not
fun.
to love? 2 months in paradise. My God.
Exactly. Super fun. So we were there. I was there for a total of almost 2 months, and like 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave and go to China. My family called. My dad had a heart attack. And was in the hospital, and they were thinking he was going to have a quadruple bypass. So I made, it wasn't even a hard decision for me. I was like, okay, I had all the savings because before I left for London, I sold my car, I sold all my furniture, I sold everything so I could just have this big thing of money, which to me was $14,000 the last year and a half. And at the time, I was like, I'm rich. Yeah. Like, oh my God. If I'm staying in a hotel in Bali, that's $3 a night. I mean, that money is going to go a long way. So I'm like, you know what, with what money I have left, I'm going to go have presents made for my family. So I went and designed all these leather jackets made in Bali because I had made friends with a bunch of locals that like were seamstresses and stuff. So I spent all the rest of my savings on presents and was like, I got to go home. I got to go home and be with my dad. So I still to this day have not made it to China, which really sucks.
It's hard to go there now. So
I know I'm scared I missed my window. So,
yeah, maybe not.
But
you did go to law school, didn't you?
I did. So I came back, took care of my dad for like 7 months and worked during that time. And then I actually left for a year and a half on an around the world ticket. So it flies you, I think it was from LA to Singapore. Then you travel by land. Then you go to Malaysia, then you travel by land up through Thailand, then do however long you want. You have like a year and a half to use the ticket and then fly from Bangkok to Bali again. And then Bali to northeastern Australia, Cairns. And then you travel however you want to get down to Melbourne. And then you fly from Melbourne to the southern island of New Zealand, Christchurch, and then do whatever you want. Fly out of Auckland to Fiji, to the Cook Islands and back to LA.
God.
And all those flights were $1,500. It was a $1,500 ticket. So
that was it. One ticket and you just top you had a pass to go on these planes.
Yeah. And you can change the tickets at any time with no charge. It was,
oh my God.
It was, I don't even know. I
what was the airline?
Exists now. It was all different airlines.
Oh, really?
It was, it was like there was these companies back then, I feel like in San Francisco that all would buy these like wholesale tickets in bulk. And they could do these around the world tickets. And I know I was flying on, they weren't the top. I was like on China Airlines. I was on Garuda. Garuda's like the big Indonesia airline. They're funny because, their headphones were like the old 50s. It looked like a stethoscope.
Yeah.
And the food. Yeah. Like it left a lot to be desired, but I was 23. I'm like, I don't care,
Right.
So, so I left on that trip and, I loved Sydney. So I kind of just stopped there and, I loved Sydney. Then I went to New Zealand for about a month and a half, did, underground cave exploration.
Yeah, here in New Zealand's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's the outdoor activity capital of the world. So you could do everything you want to do. Yeah. Then I went back to Sydney and stayed there for a year and I just waited tables.
Wow. You're like a world traveler. You're just like picking up and everything I was too afraid to do when I was 21.
Well, you could do it at any point in your life. And I think I told myself that because I met all these people in their 50s that were doing it then. And I'm like, you could do it whenever you want. But I thought, you know what, right now I'm willing to do it on the cheap, now.
Yeah. When you're 50, you want to go stay in a hotel. You're not going to live.
I want to see the Four Seasons. It's going to cost a lot more now. Than it
a little bit.
Yeah. I stayed in a hostel where I think I counted them. There was like 282 bed bug bites on my body.
My
So
God.
Yeah, it was nasty. That would not be happening today. So anyways, yeah. So I had a lot of fun, came back from that trip, met my ex-husband 2 weeks after I got home and started.
He wasn't your ex-husband at the time though.
He wasn't my ex-husband at the time. Yeah, I know. I was like, hey, I know you. Yeah, no, I met the man, which I will soon marry. And yeah, we started dating. I started working just in a string of finance jobs and I just felt lost. I wasn't really loving anything I was doing. But I did like equipment financing, everything I had touched a little bit of everything so that it eventually all came together and helped me with what I eventually was going to do, which is always what happens. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just felt lost and didn't know what to do. And I just started looking at law school again, and I think it's just because it was an easy thing that I've always thought about doing that. I'm like, if not going to law school looks like this, maybe I should be going to law school. Right. So, and again, I still was, not thinking about what my soul wanted me to do. It was more like, I need some financial stability. I still was maybe a little bit on the status. Like I was just lost. I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
So yeah, applied and got into UCLA
Okay.
So yeah, went to UCLA for my first year. And then my ex-husband got a job over in DC. So I transferred to American for my last 2 years, which is a great school. And since I was going there and I was in the center of like the international legal world, really, which is what I had wanted to do. I started doing my master's at American while I was finishing my law degree. When I was at UCLA, I knew I wanted to do like international human rights. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer, but I'm going to do a lawyer that like changes the world and makes a difference. Right.
Yeah. So, like George Clooney's girlfriend, wife now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The international lawyer.
Yeah. So, so I remember I was speaking to someone and I was like, I want to do like international human rights law. And she goes, Natalie, when you say that, it's kind of like saying, you're in a pageant and you're saying, I want world peace. Like, what do you mean? Like, there has to be a specific thing you have to focus on. And I was like, wow. Okay. So I had gone to this speaking engagement on human trafficking. And I mean, this was 2003 and human trafficking is like, everybody knows about it now. But at the time, there weren't a lot of people talking about it.
Right.
So I went to it and I was just like, what is happening? This is what I need to do. And I forgot to tell you this part of the story. When I was in Bali, we were in this small little part of the island where we needed to get to the next town. And there was like no rental cars. There's no taxis. So we met this man. He had one of those crazy, like African safari hats on. And we were like, hey, it was three of us. We're like, hey, are you going by any chance to, this next town? And he's like, yeah. We're like, can we hitch a ride with you? And he's like, yeah, no problem. He was British. So he jumped in his car and I sat in front with him. And he was an attorney for the UN working in Jakarta. And so he was traveling around. So I was like, tell me, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you do? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Right.
And we talked for the whole hour. And I was just like, that's what I'm going to do. I want to work for the UN. This sounds amazing. So when I'm leaving this human rights engagement, I'm like, who does human rights law? So I start researching organizations that do anything with, human trafficking. Yeah. And I found an office in Vienna. That's the anti-trafficking office for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Because, the UN has all these different offices and they deal with international.
Vienna's in where? Austria?
Austria. Yeah. Vienna, Austria.
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, I want to go there. So I try to find an email address for the person who runs and I can't, and I feel like you can figure out almost anybody's email address.
It's harder it's easier today.
It's easier today. Well, at the time
almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, I deduced, I'm like, okay, everybody's email seems to be at unodc.org and like their first name, period, their last name. So
that's how you do it. That's how you do it.
So I kind of guessed, yeah. So I guessed the emails of like the top people that ran the office. And I just started slamming their emails like, I really want to work for you. Resume, So, eventually one day, my husband at the time wakes me up at 4 a.m. and he's like, Natalie, somebody with a German accent's on the phone. He says he's from the UN office in Vienna. And I was like, and I like woke up just slapping myself awake. And his name was Burkhard Deman and he ran the anti-trafficking office. And he's like, Natalie, what do you think we do here? And I'm like, and I just kind of say, we do anti-human trafficking. So you're educating different countries on like, putting anti-trafficking laws in place. And he's like, okay, you will work for me. And I was like, oh my God. So it was a quick phone call and it got the job. So I ended up working in Vienna that summer because I was in law school. So these were summer jobs, right? So I worked in Vienna. Yeah, I was in law school. So
so he was still back in DC working and you were going to school in American. And then this was your summer internship, basically.
So American was in DC. Yeah. So I went to DC and started going to American, living with my husband at the time. And then I wanted to, so the summer I was going to fly and work in Vienna, Austria for the summer.
Where was he?
He was in Vienna, Austria.
Oh, he was? No, your husband?
Oh, no, my husband. Sorry. My husband was in DC. Yeah.
He had to stay
he
back.
And I were living in DC and I'm like, we both were very ambitious. So if either of us had to leave for 3 or 6 months, we were like, go do it.
Do it. Right. Yeah.
It ends up being the demise of our marriage because we're never together. But, we were young. We thought, we're untouchable. That's no big deal. Everybody's warning, like, you guys can't live in separate places while you're first and second year of marriage. And we're like, we can. So and that ends up not being the case. But anyway, so my husband stays in DC. I go to Vienna. And yeah, met the head of the legislative drafting office there, who was Libyan, and he was asked to head the North Africa Middle East office in Cairo. And I get bored really easily. So I'm working for the anti-trafficking office, not really filling my days with that much. And I'm like, I need stuff to do. So I just started walking around the UN offices, and I'm just knocking on doors to the anti-corruption, anti-money laundering. Yeah. And I'm like, do you guys have anything for me to do? Do you need anything? Do you need any help? Like, yeah, I mean, I'm 23 years old. I don't know.
And you're an intern. You're just looking for stuff. Yeah, right.
I'm like, do you have anything? So I ended up working for like every office because I'm just like, I need stuff, right? I need stuff. And the head of the legislating drafting office is like, I think now being an employer, you're like, when you meet someone that hungry for work, you're like,
oh my God, there's nobody that, you're very ambitious. They're like, we got to find some work for this girl.
Yeah. We got to keep her busy forever and never let her leave. Right. So he's like, I want you to come work for me in Cairo. And I'm like, well, I'm in law school. I don't want to quit law school. So what I'll do is I'll come back.
They wanted you to come work for you.
Yeah. They wanted me to come work. Yeah. Yeah. So, in hindsight, to me, it was like,
well, you want to finish up your law degree.
School.
I mean,
yeah,
I guess.
I'm like, I can't leave my law degree because I wasn't doing a lot of legal work. They don't hire a lot of US citizens because, most of the people that worked for them were, from like just countries all over the world. And, somebody told me, I don't know if this is true, but they said, so much funding comes from the US that if they also hired a ton of people from the US, it looked like very skewed.
I see. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there was only one other woman that was an intern working from the US, and she's still one of my very good friends to this day. But everybody else was from another country. Right. So so I was lucky to already have that job because it was so hard to get in the door.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah. So but the work we were doing was more like international, like, international corruption, stuff like that, like money laundering. Yeah. But I wasn't really using my law degree. So I thought I have to go back and finish my law degree. So anyways, go back to American for this is, I think, my third year. And then I was going to Cairo, and I, again, knew I was only going to work for one office. So I ended up applying for the American University in Cairo so I could take master's classes while I was there. So I took Middle East conflict and Islamic jurisprudence and stuff while I was working at the UN there. So we were doing really cool things, they would give me the penal code in Arabic and I needed to be translated to English. So we were trying, like in the US, we have this law that if you leave our jurisdiction, if you leave the US and you go engage in anything with child trafficking or human trafficking, and you fly back into the US, we can arrest you for a crime, even though it used to say like, wait, you're out of our jurisdiction. You can't arrest me for that. I was in Cambodia. Right. And here we're like, no, now we can arrest you. So that's one thing. So we wanted to make sure all countries had that kind of a law on the books.
Right. So people couldn't go to another country, commit these crimes and just go home.
Exactly.
Right.
And then the other thing was a lot of these people that are trafficked, they come here because somebody's like, they might be kidnapped and brought to a country, but they also might be told like, hey, we're going to help you cross the border, go to this better country. And then they end up being
they're lied
somewhere.
To, of course.
Yeah. And then they usually start being told, we're going to send you back. We're going to go kill your whole family in your country.
Right.
They tell them these horrible things. So one of the other laws we have here now is if you testify against your kidnappers, pretty much, then you can get a T visa, which is a temporary visa to actually live and stay in the US. So you're not going to get deported right away when we, find you. So, so this gives people more strength and confidence to actually come out against their, kidnappers. So they're not just like, I'm never going to say anything because I'm terrified I'm going to get sent home.
Right.
So we were trying to put this stuff on the laws, on the books, in other countries. So anyways, I would try to kind of tinkle with their penal code and then have it retranslated back into Arabic. And then, then we had to go present it to the Ministry of Justice. Not me, I'm a female. So
yeah, right. You can't go.
Yeah, no, I was the one that just took notes in the back.
Yeah,
but,
you're the brains behind the operation.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
So it was presented to the Ministry of Justice, and so yeah, just stuff like really cool stuff like that. But, my time came to an end, and there's so many other cool things that happened when I was there. But I'm going to try to keep this podcast under 17 hours.
How many countries have you lived in?
Lived in?
A lot.
Lived in not as many as I've been to.
No, if you spent like a month or more there, how many countries? Okay. More than just like a passing vacation.
Oh yeah, no, it would probably be, let me think. Oh my gosh, New Zealand, Australia, Austria, Egypt, Indonesia. It'd probably be what I've lived. UK.
Lived in London.
UK. Yeah. I'm trying to count it. Maybe 7 or 8.
You would have gotten to China. You never got there.
I know. Yeah. I would have
stayed
a lot.
There
a lot. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, I was always like, and I was just under a month when I went to Chile for 3 weeks. We went and did like Patagonia trekking and stuff, but this was all like fun stuff later. But traveling and living, definitely Australia, New Zealand. I guess you'd count it then, month and a half. Bali, I've gone back to Bali 3 times. I haven't been back since 2000, which I can't believe it's been 21 years. But at that time, I had been back 3 times for 2 months each. So in all, I probably lived in Bali for 6 months.
Right. But in terms of visiting countries, it must be a long list.
Yes. Yeah.
You've been all over the place. I'm still very curious as to how this leads up to. This doesn't seem to lead into anything that you're doing today. I'm sure there's a tie-in. I just don't know what it is yet.
There's not a tie-in. It's kind of this abrupt turn, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I end up working there, came back. I had, during my school year in law school, I worked for like a bunch of different offices for the DOJ, and like asset forfeiture. And like, we would send U.S. attorneys to train how to prosecute these laws we put into place. Like they have to actually go to these countries and train the prosecutors on how to try the cases. So stuff like that, really cool stuff. End up, the UN, actually being an attorney for the UN is really hard, even though I had worked for them a lot. Like if I wanted to practice law, they usually require that you have like at least 10 years of experience behind, actually practicing. So I thought, okay, that's somewhere down the road. I didn't honestly, I think sometime in my life I've made assumptions I shouldn't have made. So I could have tried to see if there was something I could have done, but I just assume like, oh, I got to do what everybody else does. Right. So now I know that you can, you can't go through the door. You figure out a window to climb through.
Yeah. Well, you seem like that kind of person. You're like, I'm not going to submit my resume. I'm going to send him emails and call him every day until he calls me back. Right. I mean, that's what driven people do. Am I
schizophrenic? Why does 1 minute I'm like, oh, I can't do that. The next minute I'm like, figure it out. So
right. Exactly. Climbing a tree. Now, at this point, when you finished up in Cairo, were you graduated already? You took the bar? You were an attorney?
Yes. I had not taken the bar. I was supposed to take the bar. Oh gosh, let me think. This is so.
But you graduated already.
I had graduated. Yes. It was the summer I graduated. I think I was going to take the bar and get it back in November. Or maybe I'm thinking wrong. Maybe, no, you know what? It was my second year. June. Sorry. That was my second year summer. So it was my second year summer. Okay. So when I graduated, I applied, this is like TMI for my law career, but I applied for this thing called the Presidential Management Fellowship. So it's a fellowship, which is good to know for some people who actually are interested in this, but you, I think only like 30 people get selected a year. So you apply to work for a department within the government for your 2-year stint. And then for 2 6-month stints during that 2 years, you're supposed to work for a different department. And then after that, you're supposed to be like executive management material for the federal government. So it's kind of like a fast track to being kind of high up in a department. So they didn't have any lawyers, but my extremely good friend that I had met when I was in Vienna had gotten a job at Treasury. So she walked my resume over to the head of the attorney advisor office for the terrorist financing, financial crime division where she worked, and the national security division. So they said, yeah, we'll create a position for her here. So I ended up working for Treasury. I was the youngest by about 4 years of all the people I worked with. And so I was working at Treasury. So, which was very interesting and cool. But I was working so hard to graduate from law school. I think that what happens too is when you're working so hard to achieve something, you don't stop and go, do I actually like this? Do I actually like what I'm doing? Like, I love the stuff I was doing at the UN, but I wasn't really being a lawyer. Right. So after like a year and a half, I just realized I wasn't happy. And a friend of mine came to meet me for lunch at a park outside Treasury. And she had gone to see this man who was working pretty high up at the State Department. And he left to become a career advisor for lawyers. There's so many lawyers in DC, right? In DC, it's all lawyers and lobbyists, right?
Of course. Well,
so,
to make the laws, that's who's there.
Yeah. So he helped attorneys transition into other careers because the statistic is 75% of attorneys hate their jobs.
Of course.
So he became a very wealthy man. Let's just say that there's that many people.
His timing was good too.
Yeah. So she brings me this paperwork he gives her, and it says like, read this. And then at the end, it says, if you identify with half of what this thing says, you should not be practicing law. And I remember just looking up from this paper at her, and I was just had tears streaming down my face. And I was like, really? What am I supposed to do? Like, I've worked so hard. I've gotten these prestigious positions. I think when if I don't talk about my history, especially now, people underestimate me very much. Like they think like, oh, she's fun and outgoing. Like,
really, they don't know the real story.
Assume like, oh, she's smart.
That's what's great about this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
People to meet the real Natalie.
Yeah. So it's so funny because people who never looked at me twice in law school, because sometimes people could be like, oh, I don't really want to befriend someone that's not going to forward me in some way. Right. I was getting a lot of emails from people suddenly wanting to take me for coffee. Right.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like,
all of a sudden you won the lottery and they're like, oh, Natalie. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, how could I possibly? My dad was so proud of me, so my family was like, my extended, my dad's the eldest of 9 kids. So my cousins, my aunts and uncles, everybody's like, look at Natalie, look at, so I was like,
he's a lawyer. And then you're going to tell him I'm not practicing law, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do then? A lot of people have done that, that's why they're miserable, because how do you tell your parents that you're not going to be a doctor? You're not going to be a lawyer. They put all, you put your whole life into studying and learning and, because they don't see any other pathway. They're not walking in your shoes and seeing all these things. So that's good. But you're still only like, how old are you at this point? 25, 26?
No. So by the time I had done all that traveling, between I started law school at 27 and I got married. Oh, okay.
Because you had been working, right?
Yeah. So I'm like 32, 33 now. So yeah. So
you're like an adult now.
Yeah, I'm an adult. I owned it. My ex-husband and I had owned a home. In the middle of law school, we get divorced. So that wasn't fun.
That was becoming an adult too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had life handed to me in many ways by that point. So I was like, which I think is kind of says a lot about like when you're given you learn more tools and how to deal with stuff that is not great that happens in your life.
Oh, there's no question about it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like
get resilient, right? Yeah. To become resilient.
Yeah. So at that point, I'm like, I've been through a lot. So I'm like changing my
things
career.
Don't scare you too much, right?
No, not really. Yeah. Like this whole thing, I started a new company in the middle of the pandemic. So I was just like,
big deal.
We'll figure this out, man. Just keep going. Right. So, divorced, decided, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. So I took like a good 8 months. I started going to the library and researching and being like, what are other things I can do? And I remember finding this really great book that I buy for everybody who feels lost. And it's called Smart Women Take Risks. And it tells you these little stories about, how this woman was a waitress in a restaurant, and it was called Chris's Steakhouse. And
Ruth Chris.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, and you're just like crying, like, this is so amazing, and she just was like, can I please buy the restaurant from you? Don't close it. I'll pay you.
Isn't that why it became Ruth's Chris?
Yeah.
Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the coolest story, but there's all these stories like that about like women who took risks and what they achieved. And it has all these activity pages where it's like, name 6 things you love to do. Don't think about a job. Like, do you love to cook? Do you love to sing? Whatever. And then now name 6 careers that include at least 3 things that you love to do. Now make a list.
Here's a word from our sponsors. Uplift your marketing and reinforce your brand with a digital business card from Digital Accelerant. Use a text marketing combination to stand out in front of your competition. Digital business cards make you memorable and most of all help you bring in new business through its warm lead generator. Motion graphics, intro, outro, and inspirational videos can be added during setup. Text the word LAW to 21,000. That's LAW to 21000 to learn how to get your own digital business card. Suffering from slow internet speed? Worried about hackers? Fetch Pro gets the internet from your smartphone to your Windows and Mac computer without paying for a hotspot. Always get the fastest, most stable, and secure internet access on your computer with Fetch Pro. Follow their affiliate link on our website to learn more and get connected with Fetch. Printify is the online service that simplifies and automates the process of sourcing and creating print-on-demand products branded with your company logo, product, or service. Printify is a better alternative to pre-purchasing and warehousing your merchandise for distribution or sale. Follow their link from our website to learn how to set up your own online store. And be sure to visit our online store and get yourself some podcast merch. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show.
So it made you, people always, I would tell young people and they're like, I want to travel the world because I don't know what I want to do. I'm just going to figure it out. And I'm like, the only thing you're going to figure out traveling the world is how to have fun and travel.
How to see the world.
Figure out, You're not going to figure out what you want to do. If you want to figure out the answer to anything, you got to look for the answer, which means you got to actively do the activities and do the research and figure it out, I came to the conclusion I wanted to have a day spa. I was going from like owning an inn to just doing all these kinds of things. And obviously I love to cook.
It had nothing to do with all the stuff you're interested in.
Nothing to do. I started to realize that the creative side of my brain, which I didn't realize I had, I kind of did because I love to do interior decorating. My mom is amazing at that stuff.
Okay.
I love to cook and, I hadn't thought about it at the time, but ever since I was younger, I would love makeover shows and I would be looking at people being like, you should be a redhead. Like I would just be able to look at them and be like, this would look really good on you. So, but I never thought about that at the time. I would have never thought about that. So I had gone to visit a culinary school and I remember looking at the knife set being like, oh my God, that knife set, like I hear angels sing looking at it, but walking through the back kitchen, I'm like, something doesn't feel right.
Right.
So I went to the interior design school and I saw the cool projects and I'm like, this looks cool, but something doesn't feel right. So I still couldn't really figure out. And I thought a day spa would be really cool. Okay. So I start putting together a business plan to get like an SBA loan, start trying to figure out like, how am I going to do this? And there was a convention for day spa owners in Vegas.
But meanwhile, it wasn't like, you know how to do facials and
I know
do
nothing.
Nails and stuff. You were going to be the business owner. You have to hire people.
Yeah, 100%. So, but I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I have to figure out everything I need to know in order to own the business. Right. And I knew I was going to have to hire people. So I go to this day spa convention and you're meeting all these people who own day spas, want to own day spas. And they start talking about how they're the second behind restaurants for failure and how the monthly bills, water bill a month could be $10,000.
It depends on what you're doing.
Stuff. And I'm like, ooh, okay. I'm learning. I'm like, wait a second. Now, I want to learn more. And,
but you know what? The failure rate is so high because the business is more complex than people think they go into, and they don't write a business plan and they don't map it all out and they don't see these things coming. And then they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize we use so much water. Well, if you thought about it ahead of time, that would make sense, right? It would. So you're already doing that. You said you started writing a business plan and whatever, and a lot of people don't. So that takes you right out of the category of the high failure group just by doing that. You probably didn't feel that way at the time, but.
Well, I figured as I'm listening to these people speak, I think, okay, there's a reason why people fail. It's either somebody who just, somebody who's like a practitioner. So like a masseuse or a hairstylist, and they're like, I want to own a day spa. And they know nothing about running a business.
Right. It doesn't translate.
Or somebody like me, an attorney, like I'm going to own a day spa and just come in and throw money at it. And I don't know anything. So I'm like, okay,
no planning.
This is why you need to be both. So I meet a woman and she says, you should really add a hair component, like a hair salon to it. And I'm like, really? Why? She goes, it has the best profit margin of anything in this industry. And so I become friends, you just start to talk with people and we're all having lunch. And I go, well, do you think I should go to cosmetology school? And they're, no, you don't have to do that. And I go, but I want to understand what I'm selling. Like I need to understand, I need to get my hands and know what it is I'm doing. Or else I can't sell it. And then I want my employees to be able to have an intelligent conversation with me. Right. So they're like, no. And I'm like, no, I feel like I need to do it. But a funny story as I'm flying, and I have a huge love in my heart for George Michael. I was so sad when he passed away because as I'm leaving, I told Treasury that I had a family emergency. I did not tell them, look, I'm going to leave you with this huge prestigious position. Right. I'm going to go to Vegas and go to this day spa convention. Right. So I told them that. So
you were still working at Treasury when you started? I was still working for Treasury.
Oh yeah, no. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm still working at Treasury. So
I thought you quit your job and you took 8 months to figure out what you're doing.
No. I even was still contemplating what am I doing. So I actually had already applied and tried to start working for the SEC in New York for one of my 6-month stints. And I was like, whichever one happens first, it's kind of like the Peace Corps thing. I'm like, I'm just going to let the universe choose my path. Because I'm going to put them both out there. Am I leaving Treasury or am I going to do this crazy thing? So I had applied for the SEC, and I don't know if anybody ever works for government. It takes a million years and there's no communication. They're just like, what do you mean? We had your resume. We were making it happen. And it's like, well, I didn't hear from you.
They don't tell you anything, right?
They don't tell you anything. So I'm like, I'm supposed to maybe go to New York and work for the SEC. Not sure. But as we're taking off in the plane to go to Vegas, I suddenly start going, Natalie, what are you doing? You have this prestigious job. A day spa? Are you freaking out of your mind? And just that beautiful moment when you go above the clouds, and it just looks like this beautiful, quiet, pristine thing. I'm listening to my iPod. This is how long ago it was. And my iPod on. And as we go over the clouds, You Gotta Have Faith comes on from George Michael. And I remember I was like, oh, thank you, George. And I just was like, it calmed me. It calmed me and it allowed me to go to this convention.
No, because even those driven people, you definitely question things.
Oh, God. Yeah. You're like, what the hell? Are you out of your mind?
Right. People are going to think I'm nuts. Right.
Yeah. So anyways, so go to this convention, realize I need to go to cosmetology school. So I go back to DC. And I make an appointment at Aveda. I don't know if you've heard of Aveda. It's a big hair care company. They have a cosmetology school in DC. So I was like, well, let me just go take a tour. I took a tour of the culinary school.
Is this like you go to this is like go to law school for 3 years? How long does it take to?
So every state has a requirement of hours you have to study cosmetology. So in California, it's 1,000. I can't remember what it was in DC, but it could take you anywhere from 7 to 13 months. Depends on, because you do.
It's like a year figure.
Yeah, it's like a year. Yeah. So I schedule an appointment to go in and I walk in to do a tour. And I got butterflies. And I was like, that feeling
in a good way, when you like your excitement.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I never, ever, this never crossed. This is it. This is what I want to do. I want to do hair. Never crossed my mind until I walked in there. Even when I was like, I need to take a tour, I was thinking the day spa. But when I walked in and I saw the products and the stations and stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And then I went into Treasury and I gave them notice. And I thought, I've always wanted to live in New York. I was still in my 30s, so still a little immature and watching shows like Sex and the City, and you just, glamorize New York City. And I'm like, if I'm going to uproot my life and change everything, I'm not really going to stay in DC. DC is a whole beast, So I knew I didn't want to stay there long term. So I was like, I'm going to move to New York. So I took there's a bus, there's like a Chinatown bus for $40, Right. So went up to New York and visited the Aveda school there in Soho. And I was like, this is where I'm going to go. So I applied. I went and met a bunch of people on Craigslist, some very scary, and found a place to rent a room and signed up to start everything a month later. So
wow.
That's what I did.
So your first business was a hair salon.
Yeah. So went to cosmetology school, start doing hair. I'm older. I'm like, I don't have time to mess around. So I went after it really hard. So I became like a 1% earner for hairstylist within 5 years. The top 10 in the country, I mean. So doing really well. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I need to have more control over my livelihood. And I think, everybody thinks I could do this better when they work at a salon. Right. So I opened up my own salon.
Oh, so you didn't at first open your own salon. You went to work for high-end salons?
No, I, for a few years there was like, I never want to own a salon. I was like the same thing with law school. It's like, who are you? I was like, oh, this is too much. I just want to go and do my client and leave.
Go home. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Go home. But, so I think I just had a hard time finding a place that spoke to me. So I was like, you know what, I went to Patagonia with two of my clients and we trekked, Patagonia and went all over Chile in 2016.
You know what? Move over to your right a little bit. I'm losing you.
Oh, sorry. Am I leaving you? Oh, sorry.
I can't turn the screen. It won't work. You have to move. I can't move your camera.
Yeah,
there you
no
are.
problem. So two of my clients were like, do you want to go to Patagonia? Let's trek. So we did. So while we're there, they had said, why don't you open a salon? Like, how much are you paying this place? Because I was at a commission salon at the time where you give them a percentage of everything you make. And I would tell them, and they're like, what? Because when I'm making as much as I'm making, I'm bringing in like, 250 grand a year. And
they don't want to lose you.
Yeah. Oh no, that was a very bad situation. So, but my clients are like, how could you pay them that much money? Like you need to open your own salon. And I go, you guys, it can be so dramatic and just nightmare. And they're like, you can make it whatever you want to make it, Natalie. You can create. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So they had planted a seed. So they were even laughing at me on this trip. I'm like, ooh, what do I want the salon to look like? They're like, wow, it does not take much for you to just grab an idea and run with it.
Yeah.
So we got back from Patagonia and within a year I was open. So, so started owning on, and I wanted it to be a big education focused salon. So I was bringing in stylists from all over the world that were well-known, and we would host classes. So we would have like 30 stylists sign up. We would just do these, Instagram, like, hey, we're having this guy come to teach a class. You guys want to, and then they would buy, spend $1,000, whatever, to come take this class. And for me to host all those, I was able to get that education for my team. Yeah. So we were all becoming way better stylists. Like, I was already financially doing well not financially, because every dime I made at this point, I'm putting back in the salon, right? I'm like paying myself nothing.
Right. But it's a profitable business.
100%. Yeah. So, but I'm becoming a way better hairdresser was my point. So, we were doing great with the education.
This was in California now, right? You opened this.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm in New York, going to cosmetology school, started working at some high-end salons in New York. And I realized I love New York, but I didn't want to live there. I thought at the time I was still going to have kids. Yeah. And I was like, I can't imagine raising kids here. The cost of living so high. So I ended up coming back to California. I'm like, if I'm going to build a clientele, I don't want to build a clientele and move. So come back to California where my family is. And I'm working at salons, along Newport Coast, Corona del Mar, like, the more affluent area of Orange County, where I live. So, built a really great clientele. And in 2018, in the fall of 2018, I started having this intense pain in my body. And it kind of feels like you have cramps, like body aches from the flu, but it's like 10 times worse. And it's all the time. Yeah. It's like 24 hours a day. And I'm
sounds like, what's that? Fibromyalgia, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't that.
No.
Okay.
So I think I'm just getting sick and I can't kick a flu. So anyways, that January, I went to see my doctor and we ran some tests, and we didn't run every test. I thought we ran every test, but it came back that I was like beginning of Hashimotos and autoimmune
My wife has
disease.
that problem. My wife has those problems. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we thought maybe that was it. So she starts treating me for all that stuff. I'm changing my diet. She even had me, I was not getting better. She's like, after months, she's like, this is going to take like 6 months to a year, Natalie. This isn't something you could just take a Z-Pack for. Like you have to change your life. So I'm doing that January when we found out. And so by May, she's like, are you feeling better? And I'm like, no, not at all.
And was it things you were eating? So you changed your diet? Was it things that you were using, like products and stuff like that? So it's a combination of a lot of things. Yeah.
So I started, my toxic load, we took a heavy metal test and toxic load test. So I had a ton of radiation and aluminum, I guess, in my blood. And at the time I was like, is it deodorant? The radiation
where does that come from?
Well, I'm a stylist. So I would stick my morning coffee in the microwave like 10 times a day. It took me people would be like, there's Natalie's lunch. It's been sitting there for 8 hours. And I just keep nuking it. So the microwave was the radiation. So
I guess there's radiation that comes out of the microwave when the door's closed. That's not very reassuring.
In your food too. Yeah. It's really bad for you. Yeah. So, and then the aluminum, I'm like, what the heck? As I'm reaching down to pick up a foil to do a highlight, And I'm
You're touching it all the time.
Like 500 times a day.
Yeah.
You know, and at this point I had heard somewhere, like whatever you touch goes into your bloodstream.
Your skin absorbs, sure.
Yeah. Your skin absorbs everything. So I'm like, oh my God, there's the aluminum. So,
right.
But then also my other toxics, you know, were really high. So I started to do research on like eliminating toxins in your life. And then you start to go like, oh my gosh, there's toxic chemicals in everything, right? Our dish soap, our laundry. And then of course I'm not hearing the clean beauty stuff that much yet, but if you are, it's more like makeup and skincare.
Right.
And then I start to kind of realize there's a lot of chemicals in our hair care too. So I start to try to only carry clean products
in
our salon. Yeah.
You had just one location at this point? You just had one location?
Yeah, one location in Corona del Mar, right near Fashion Island. So we change over to PPD, ammonia-free color. I stop using foil. I start using these biodegradable papers you can wash and reuse.
Oh, wow.
So and we're trying to do a lot of things zero waste in the salon. There's, you know, a way to measure your color with this technology where it doesn't make you over mix color, because I guess salons too, they put about 800,000 pounds of chemical waste, like hair color they never use, into landfills every day. So I was like, oh my gosh, we need to be careful how much we're mixing. We're not wasting stuff. So I was trying to make a zero waste. And, you know, we were like, turn off the light when you're not in that room. You know, don't wash unless the loads, like we were trying to do everything we could.
One of the zero carbon footprint.
Exactly.
Right.
So we started doing that. And so it was already on the right track that way, but I'm not getting better. So my doctor even has me start doing EMDR. It's a type of therapy, because she thought maybe it's your stress, you know, owning a business, you have high stress, and if the stress can really make you not get better. So I'm doing everything. And then here comes 2000.
You're still not getting better?
I'm still not getting better. Yeah. And this was going all, so I just keep taking the pills, just thinking maybe it's going to get better over time. And then in January of 2020, I go back and I'm like, okay, we need to take some more tests. So she takes these tests, and February, I'm like, hey, because the tests, the labs that take these kind of more advanced integrative medicine tests are all in North Carolina, and it can take like a month to get them back. So I keep calling and I'm like, hey, whatever happened with that test? And still hadn't, the front desk is like, we still haven't gotten it yet. So anyways, here comes March.
Okay.
And we get shut down. Right. So, so I'm home, and initially I'm like, okay, I'm not going to panic. The whole world's shut down, you know? So what am I supposed to do? So I immediately call everybody and I'm like, hey, I already can tell you right now, I'm not going to make my bills on the 1st, because it was like the 17th. Because I had to shut down my business. So everybody was very cool about it. So I was always like, why is everybody freaking out? Because everybody was pretty understanding. And, you know, and I only did that for like 3 months. I have paid everything since then. But at the time, so I'm at home and I'm like, okay, eventually thinking after a week, I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. I can't physically touch people. I don't know how long this is going to last.
Yeah,
so I started thinking, what are holes in the market that we're not supplying right now in this hair industry? And I start to think back to all of my clients. You know, first they had no idea what was clean unless I told them, you know, because the ingredients on the label, you can't read those ingredient labels. They're like, what are half these?
You don't know what half these things mean. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. And then I'm learning more about greenwashing, which is like these companies are saying they're clean, they're natural, they're green. These words have become like they mean nothing. There's nothing behind them anymore. It's, you know, brands are starting to realize that people want clean. So they want to grab some of that market. So they're saying they're clean when they're really not. So
really, there's no regulations, right?
No regulations in the beauty. It's considered cosmetic. So people can say anything's green and clean that they want, and it's not. So I'm starting to go, oh my gosh. So, you know, we can't just trust what we read anymore. We have to do our due diligence and read it.
Right.
You know? So I start doing that for my clients. But then the other thing is whenever a client came in, I had these full-blown consultations with them. And I would say, you know, if they were like, hey, I want this color, I'd be like, your hair can't really do that, but it's a team effort. So what you do at home is just as important as what I do here. So I need you to do these things at home in order to have your hair thicker, get your hair blonder, do whatever you want. So I would give them these at-home hair care regimens. It was like, I even had a prescription pad. I'd like write them out a prescription and tell them how to do each step. And they loved it. And I'd be like, do what I say for 6 months. And if you do not see your hair change and for the better, you can tell me to, bite it and do whatever you want, buy whatever you want. And so they'd be like, okay. And I always make this joke, like nobody ever told me to bite it. They always were like, they'd be seeing me for years and they'd be like, oh, I need more shampoo, Natalie. And I'd be like, oh, okay. What were you thinking? And they're like, I don't know. Go, you just pick which one. You just put it on the counter, put whatever I need. And they just blanket buy whatever, because they trusted me. And they also knew I never would sell them anything that didn't work. So, but a lot of new clients that came to me would be like, I've never had anybody talk to me about my products. Like I would ask people,
never. You go, you get your hair cut and you leave.
Yeah. And if you even ask, some of them would be like, I'd ask like, hey, what should I use? And it would hurt me, but some of them would say like, yeah. And then my stylist would say, oh, it doesn't matter. They're all the same. And I'm like, a hairstylist told you that? So really? It was, So I started doing research and unfortunately only 3% of stylists talk to their clients about their hair care. And it's like this weird, like I'm an artist that I don't want to be salesy. It's got this weird taboo. And I tried to I educated my team. So they actually ended up being very good at it, from going from selling 0 when they started with me to selling a ton after. But I'm like, it's like selling somebody a cashmere sweater without the tag on the inside that tells them how to care for it. Like they're going to go home. If they didn't ever own a cashmere sweater,
they're going to put it in the dryer and it's going to end up this big. I did that once when we were just married to my wife's sweater. I go, look, honey, our neighbor's little sweater for her little baby got in she's like, that's my cashmere sweater. I'm like,
oh no.
I had to buy her a new sweater. Yeah.
Oh, your poor wife. Oh,
but that's a good analogy. That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I tell them like, we're the aftercare tag. You have to tell them or else they're going to go home. They're going to ruin it. And so,
and have a bad experience and say it doesn't work and, whatever.
Yeah. And hey, my hair, it faded so fast. Did you not do something right? And I'm like, you guys, if they're going home and washing it with a stripping, horrible shampoo and conditioner, ruins all that work they just paid for. They're bummed out, but they also might turn around and blame you. So like, just be smart about it, educate them, because you're not doing your client any favors. You're doing them a huge disservice. If you charge them a bunch of money to make them get that hair color, then you should tell them how to make it last long. Right. So anyways, that's something that doesn't happen enough. So I realized, okay, there's 2 major things that people don't have access to a hairstylist to give them all their recommendations based off of their concerns, their hair type, their hair texture, all that stuff. And then they don't have a place they can trust. So I'm like, how can I do this where I can give it to people who can actually, aren't geographically close to me? And I'm like, I can try to make a website version of me, So that's what made me decide to start North Authentic.
So it was actually, ironically, it was kind of the pandemic that freed up your time to say, hey, we got to pivot this business, right?
I would have never had the time before. Never.
Yeah, sure.
So during the first 3 months, I think we were shut down, I started to feel really good. Like I couldn't work out for like 2 years. They told me like just to go on nice walks. So I would make jokes like, I'm going to the retired folks home and we're all going to work out, because I'm like, I can't do anything but go for a brisk walk. So I'm starting to be able to go on more hikes and like squats. And I'm like, wow, I'm starting to feel really good. This is weird. Maybe it was the stress of the salon, right? And I'm starting to do all these, like, I just watch every webinar possible because I'm like, I don't know anything about running a website. I don't know how to build I don't know how to do any of this stuff. So I'm learning everywhere I possibly can. And then
because you sound like me, even if you hired somebody, you want to know how it works and what your options are. And exactly. I'm the same way with the podcast. I had to learn it myself because I wanted to know.
Well, yeah, because then it's easier for someone to be like, hey, I can do this, this, and this for you. And this is how I'm going to charge. And you're like, you sound smart. Okay. Here's
that's the thing.
Which I did.
People do.
I did do that mistake though, sometimes because I was like, I do not want to figure out Google ads, So I finally had to teach myself so that I can ask hard questions because I've gone through quite a few people for certain things. And I'm, by the 4th person I've hired, I'm like, what's your ROAS? Like, what's your comment? What's your average ROAS for your clients? And they're like, I don't even know what that term means. Yeah. They're like, nobody asked me this stuff. And I'm like, and I didn't ask this stuff a year ago, but I learned quickly. I learned when I make mistakes and I'm throwing money at people because they sound like they know what they're talking about. And I'm always like, you have to be your own advocate with everything, your medical, your health, your everything. You should know it. Right. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm always like, I need to understand so I can have an intelligent conversation and I know what to look for to find out if I'm getting the results I need to keep investing in this thing. Right. So anyways, we go back to the salon and I'm like, I was very, very blessed because we were doing well at the salon. I got a PPD loan. Or PPP loan. So I was able to, and I was like, well, the salon's closed. So I need to hire. So I ended up hiring someone who's still with me and I love her, Brooke, my second command. And I said, like, I hired someone so we could start building out this. We had a website already that I had built the year before, but it wasn't monetized. Like we weren't making any money off of it.
Right.
So we're like, how can we turn around this website and start doing all this stuff? So I used my PPP loan to hire her and, another person to kind of help me start doing the development and stuff of this website. So
where did you come up with the name?
True North was my first, when I was trying to figure out the name of my salon, which ends up being our salon. I was trying to come up with a name and I saw on the side of this building, it said, have you found your true north? And it took me like a year to do brand. Like I hired a brand manager and stuff when I was even opening the salon. I paid for coaches on owning a salon. Like I am like, before I do anything, I have to prepare. I'm an over preparation person. So, I was doing everything. So I was like, I want to make as few mistakes as possible. I know I'm going to make a ton. I just want to make less. So anyways, when I was looking for a name, I saw that what's your true north? And I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? And then it's true north is like, if you follow your internal compass, which is like you at your core, like your values, your morals, everything, no matter what, if you stay in your true north, like if it's a compass, you're staying in your true north, it might look different than somebody else's straight shot to north or whatever. But if you stay your true north, you're always on the right track. So like authenticity, making us feel beautiful in our own skin. Like, that was such a big deal to me. So I loved True North. So I start looking up True North and everybody in the world has already heard of True North. So there's like True North Hardware, True North Real Estate, there's all these companies named True North. And I'm like, damn it. Okay. I cannot do True North Salon.
Yeah. I know a guy in the UK. He's got a consulting company, True North Consulting or remote coaching or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, it's a great term, but I'm like, okay, I can't use this. So the woman I had hired to help me with branding, she goes, what about this like North Authentic? Or what about just North? And I'm like, that's good. I like that. Okay. So I opened North Salon and then North Authentic was kind of the overall
kind of branch off
name.
Of that.
Yeah. And then we made our logo. It's the compass with an arrow. And in the middle of our logo, it's a little TN. So the True North is in there.
Oh, good.
So it's still very much the basis of us, but so North Authentic was born even before the salon was open. So anyways, we have this, we're starting to build this out. We go back to the salon and I'm like, I'll just work 3 days a week and be working, 24/7 on the website. Otherwise,
it's an e-commerce business, right?
Yes.
That sources out. You don't manufacture your own products, right? Do you have stuff made? So you're sourcing out real clean, actual clean, green, healthy alternatives to shampoo, soaps. What are other things on the site?
So we wanted to focus specifically on hair care because the clean beauty movement is so focused. You can find a million websites for clean beauty, but everybody's forgotten about hair. It's kind of like the forgotten stepchild. And I think it's because people don't realize your scalp is one of the most absorbent areas of skin on your body. So it's like a sponge.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So people don't know that. So they're like, oh, it's my hair. It's not touching my skin. It's not the same. But I'm like, okay, the first thing we need to do is educate people that hair care matters. And then the second thing we have to do is find products that actually are clean. So when we first started, we only had like 3 or 4 brands that we could find. And over the last year, searching high and low, we finally are up to about 13. But we've been finding these brands all over the world. Like we have some from Australia, some from the Netherlands, some from,
so you contact
Italy.
them and you say, we're this company, we're looking to carry your things. They send you samples or something, or
initially we wanted to be clean. So we said, okay, I've heard of your brand. You say you're clean. We need to see a list of ingredients.
Okay.
So we created, I actually found this woman she used to work for the World Health Organization and all this stuff. And she's the executive director for the Clean Label Project. So they tried to push for clear, more transparent labeling on food and consumer products.
Got it.
So I found her somehow and reached out to her and said, hey, I really am looking for someone to help me come up with our ingredient list, like our nasties, right? So that's every company has like the list of like they will not accept. So she ends up working with me and I learned a ton more on, you know, even more than I knew when I started this. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, like that's bad. That's like, I'm really learning the stuff that we need to include in our list. So our list becomes really extensive. And then of course, every single toxic chemical, you know, formaldehyde doesn't say formaldehyde on a bottle. There's like 70 different words for formaldehyde.
It's called something else, right?
Right. So we
like sugar, right? There's 27 different words for sugar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we create this database that has every word of every toxic chemical on our no-no list.
This is like things that you will not accept in the product to carry in your store.
Yeah,
got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's some ingredients that we really do not want to accept, but they are so across everyone, like phenoxyethanol, acrylates, polysorbates.
Yeah, you see those a lot of places.
Yeah, they're still way cleaner than everything on the market, but they're not as clean as some of our brands have literally nothing in them, but like organic banana leaf juice and lavender essential oil type stuff, like Quilting King, Evolve, like Inner Sense. We have brands that are like, they are already up here, like winning on all, you know, just going for it. But there's some of our brands that they are mostly clean. So we have filters for those where we're like, okay, by 2023, we want to say that we're going to allow you in right now if you have polysorbates, phenoxyethanol, silicone, you know, but we have very few products that have those things in them. But we're saying like, we know how long it takes to reformulate. Like to reformulate a product can take a year. You have to test it and do all the stuff. So we're like, we're not going to say you have a year to do it, especially during COVID. It's like if people can't get into their, you know, so we're like, okay, by 2023, if you still have products with the stuff in it, we're going to drop those products. So our goal is to get North Authentic so big that we actually have some muscle that we're like, okay, the people are speaking. You need to reformulate this if you still want to stay relevant. And if you still want us to carry you, because we're such a great, huge supplier, you know, which was what we want to be. Then they're like, we don't want to lose North Authentic. We got to figure it out. Right. So we have our list has stuff that is absolutely a no now, because we know it's so easy to make a hair product without 1,4-dioxin in there. And there's some stuff that is so paraben.
It's just like, cheap. Is that why?
Well, you know, back, you know, before the Industrial Revolution, these brands were, you know, these companies were making these products, you know, a lot of them were being made in their kitchen with like all natural ingredients. And then as brands got bigger, you know, the only way to make more money is not to raise your price, because then you're going to, you know, push away your clients. Right. It's to drop your cost.
Quality of stuff. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so
but in the 50s, nobody cared. They ate, you know, crap, and they put 100%. Crap in there, and we hairspray, and, you know, now we want to be healthier. So how are sales going though, since you opened?
Really good. Yeah. I mean, we are trying a lot of
social media campaigns and stuff like that.
A ton of social media. Google is great because people are already looking for some of these brands. Yeah. So we're doing great. I mean, we've had like 27% growth every month.
Wow.
Since we opened. So it's been really awesome. So we're entering our second Christmas, because we really launched probably last June. We're about 14 months old or so, 15 months old.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. Well, we'll put links in the show notes, you know, to the site, and any other things people here. I'm sure they can find, like the book you mentioned. People can find it on Amazon and stuff like that. But I'll ask you this, because this whole discussion is very good in terms of, you know, I mean, you have a very good educational background. You've seen the world, you've done all kinds of things, but part of it is because you're relentless and you know, you're just driven. But a lot of it is if people listen about the fundamental principles that you have to follow, like you prepared and over prepared and continue to prepare and continue to educate yourself to, like you said, you will make mistakes, and that's how you learn, right? We all make lots of mistakes, but if we avoid the big ones, the ones that put us out of business, you know, like I didn't anticipate our water bill would be $20,000 a month, you know, that type of stuff. It's because you prepare. So for advice for people listening, right? Entrepreneurs, people starting a business. What are one or two things that you feel that you either did right or wrong, or, you know, you'd be like, wow, I wish I could do that again, or I'm glad I did that type of a thing.
Yeah. 100% that I watch every webinar and read every book and read every article I possibly can. And I know that there's things that have like, countering opinions, but just, educate yourself as much as possible. And definitely over preparation can be one of the things, but just understand what you're doing. And I'm always like, at the end of the day, people are like, well, what if you fail? And I'm like, I won't fail. And to me, even if the company doesn't do well, I am a totally different person from when I started it. Like I know so much more. I've grown so much. So to me, that's not a failure. And also, I'm just also like, I won't fail. I will always push forward.
Well, you're prepared. You can't fail. You can make mistakes that are learning experiences. They're not failures. I mean, it's almost impossible at this point for you to fail because, the where you are and look, could you have opened a hair salon and just said, sure, and hired stylists? Sure. People do it all the time. Of course, that's why they fail, because they don't spend the time. They don't go to cosmetology school and they don't learn the business and they don't become an expert. I mean, you not only became an expert, but you started a school, which was a separate stream of revenue for the business that also was valuable to overeducate your people and make them better. So you turn that into a profit center. You could have hired somebody to come in and just teach your people. Instead, you're like, well, let's make a school out of it. Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Academy at North.
Right, exactly. I think it's awesome. But I got to tell you, I so much appreciate not only your story and you sharing and spending the time. This is one of the longer podcasts that I've had.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it because it's a great story for people to listen to and to learn about, people are like, well, I'm going to drop out of high school and become a billionaire. No, you can go to college, you can experience these things, you can have jobs, and you can find what you want to do in life, get experience, and learn how to improve your chances of success, right? We can't guarantee it, but you really can improve it if you're the kind of person that, like you said, becomes a student of what it is you're interested in. And a lot of people don't do that. They're just, I don't know, they're afraid. They think they're going to wing it. It'll be fine. It's never fine.
I think the winging it thing is the thing that's big, because I hear people like, my business is failing. And it's kind of like, well, why? Like,
right. They can't show you a business plan to look at. They can't give you anything for you to evaluate what they're doing.
Yeah. You have to know your numbers. You have to break down stuff.
Big time.
You have to,
big time.
Like, you don't want to say a blanket statement because, are you not spending enough on advertising? Like, you have to really stand back and look at the big picture and then find micro parts of the business and be like, okay, what can I do differently here? What can I do differently here? And the thing too, that I've seen with people I know that want to start a business is they think it's all the sexy stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's going to be, if your business is 60% the sexy stuff, you're winning. Like, you're doing the part you love. Like, you're shopping and finding the stuff you love.
Yeah. Most people don't even get that.
But if you don't know how to do your books, if you're like, I'm not comfortable selling, I'm not like, when you're become a successful business owner, you're like, I don't care what I got to do. Like, I'm making the sale. Like,
right,
like,
of course.
I got to make money. I got to pay the bills. So
you want to be serious about it. It's not a joke. Look, I get clients that are like, I'm not really comfortable asking my clients to sign contracts. Now, you go to get your hair done. You don't sign a contract. But in a lot of businesses, they have client agreements, whatever. They're like, I'm not comfortable just whipping that out like I'm a salesperson. I go, well, first of all, you can't look at it as like whipping something out. You got to figure a way to become comfortable with that. Yeah. So you do protect yourself and do business the right way, the professional way. Yeah. You felt that it wasn't professional for somebody to come to you and pay you money to color their hair or whatever without educating themselves. They don't go out in the world and waste all their money and time. Very few people do that. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why you're successful. I mean, it's kind of evident. I think if you hear your story, it's not that, I know you said, my story is not going to compare to others. Your story more than compares. You have a great story. You have a great story. So I can't thank you enough for spending time with me on it's midday, I guess there. It's Friday afternoon here. You're in California. Yeah. And let's definitely stay in touch. I want to watch the business and watch North Authentic grow. Maybe, in a year or two, we can check in, see what the business is, hopefully post-pandemic as to what's going on. So
yeah,
I can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I haven't had the ability to tell the whole story. Sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going on and on, but yeah, this is super fun. It's fun to relive it even. You forget, so.
You do. Thanks so much, Natalie.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you for having me.
If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Amazon Music, and many of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com. The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted and produced by me, Mitch Beinhacker. If you'd like more information about my legal services, you can find me on social media or visit my website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.